Hello and welcome aboard another episode of the Talkin Texans video podcast, available for you on the ESPN Houston, ESPN 97.5 and 92.5 YouTube channel. I am Paul Gallant, host of the Paul Gallant Show on ESPN 97.5 and 92.5, weekdays 10 to noon. And he is DJ Bien-Aime, the beat reporter for the Houston Texans for the mothership itself, ESPN. DJ, we had a second availability for the media to see the Houston Texans at OTAs earlier today. I think we should start with the quarterback. A bit of a change from last week where Davis Mills was working with the ones exclusively. CJ Stroud got a chance today to work with the starting unit.
Yeah, I wish we could have gone to OTA practices back-to-back days because then maybe they just might have been rotating them, because again, like last week was on a Tuesday, today's on a Wednesday, so maybe it's just, all right, you get this day, Davis gets this day. That happens a lot across the league, especially when if you're having a quarterback competition. But today, Wednesday, and again, we're recording this hours after practice, so these are fresh thoughts. Yeah, CJ ran with the ones the whole entire practice, team, 7-on-7, 2-minute, all that. And today was a good day. Like I will give him that. I'm a hard grader overall when it comes to quarterbacks or just over. Yeah, and he looked good today. Like, he pushed the ball down the field. He had a 40-yard-ish deep ball to Nico Collins, dropped it right in the bucket. And Nico was able to come down with it over Kobe Francis. CJ Stroud had some other plays where he was able to push the ball down the field. There's one where he got it to Dameon Pierce, but it might have been a tad out of his reach, but Damon did get his hands on it. It was on a wheel route. But what I really liked the most on that play was you saw CJ quickly identify what coverage they were in, and he went to his second read because it looked like he was trying to get it to the receiver on the outside who was running an in-breaking route. It may have been Tank. Don't exactly remember exactly who it was. Could have been Robert. But regardless, he saw that wasn't going to be there based on the coverage that was there, because that receiver running an in-breaking route got doubled by the corner and safety. And then he threw the wheel route to Dameon Pierce. Now, it was a tad bit too far, but Dameon did get his hands on it, but he wasn't able to come down with it. But again, decisive. And I think that's the main thing I look for when it comes to rookie quarterbacks in this stage of the offseason, is just being decisive with what you're seeing and throwing the ball where it needs to go. One thing I'm always worried of is quarterbacks that hold the ball and pat it, down to hut. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then they throw it. Nah, that's not NFL football. You gotta be a 1, 2, 3, get it out. 1, 2, 3, get it out. That's what's gonna be a basis of this offense. It's just being able to plant that back foot, get the ball out, whether it's short, intermediate, or even sometimes deep. But again, in this offense, they're not gonna focus so much on attacking down the field. It's gonna be more about intermediate, short, getting the ball to receivers in space, so then now they can turn those catches into a bunch of yards after the catch. So again, the only way you really do that is if you're being able to get them the ball on time, which CJ did, especially in a 2-minute drill. It was very efficient, very quick. You really saw him looking confused. But again, as we said last time, it's OTAs.
Yep.
So I just want to, I'm going to throw the flower. I'm going to give the flowers to CJ. But again, OTAs, May 31st.
May 31st, but lots of complimentary things being said about him as well. Here's some of the fluffiness from today. D'Amico Ryans said for CJ Stroud, this week has been really good. It's been eye-opening how on it Stroud was today. He's progressing in the right direction. The sky is the limit. Bobby Slowick, the offensive coordinator of this offense that you talked about, who wants the ball to get out quickly. He compared it, I guess, his offense to the old Gary Kubiak, Andre Johnson offense the Texas had. Slowick said, quote, he's been awesome. He's been putting the work in. And I think the really interesting quote that came out shows that CJ Stroud does have a thirst for knowledge. Defensive coordinator Matt Burke said Stroud was very intentional about learning defenses and coverages. I respect that about him. He says this after he pulled Burke aside, Stroud did, to spend 10 minutes asking him about different coverages. All of these things that you want to hear. And to go back to what you were saying just a moment ago, DJ, yes, this offense is going to be primarily geared around getting the ball out quick, but when you find yourself in a very difficult situation as a team, sometimes you can't exactly operate in the offense the way that you want. It's not to say that you want a quarterback that's going to be chucking the football down the field every single play, but you want a guy who is capable of making the occasional difficult throw and who has the stones to make the occasional difficult throw, because there will be some times where he's going to have to pull a rabbit out of his hat, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, the deep ball to Nico, that was a difficult throw. I mean, actually, in reality, I was doing some research, and there's been a lot of analytics on this. Throwing the deep ball like a go route on the outside, that's the hardest pass to complete. That has like the lowest percentage of completions in the entire NFL because one, the defensive backs are just too good, and then two, the cornerbacks can use the sideline as an extra defender. So
Right.
you really got to be able to drop it in the bucket. And he did that with Nico, to that pass to Nico. And again, that other pass, when he kind of pushed it to Damian Pierce on the wheel route, like he'll push the ball down the field when asked to. So I don't think that's something that I'm really too much worried about. It's just more about, can you execute the offense efficiently on a play-by-play basis, be able to be accurate and on time in the intermediate game, because in the West Coast offense, that's where they're going to live and die by, is can we be efficient, effective in the 10 to 20 intermediate range? Because that's when you can really create a lot of yak. Because again, if one missed tackle, now you can take that 50, 60. I mean, I remember watching Dolphins versus Green Bay when Tua ran that play action bootleg and then he threw it to Waddle. That was in the intermediate. Waddle made one person miss, 84-yard touchdown. So, and we saw it with Debo in the playoff game against Seattle, where he caught that short or intermediate-ish pass and he took it 60 in the second half. That's what they want to do, and that's why I think CJ is a really good fit for this offense, because I think he can do the difficult stuff that you're asking, but he can also has good ball placement to put it where it needs to be so receivers can make plays after the catch.
That offense that Slowick referenced was frustrating to some Texans fans at the very end. That was, I think, largely a byproduct of Matt Schaub sort of falling apart. The Liz
Yeah.
Frank injury that he had, he just never really was the same quarterback after he had it. Yeah, at the beginning of 2012, he had some nice games, but as the season went on, I don't know if his foot was starting to wear out or whatever, but all of a sudden the offense stopped being seemingly capable of throwing the ball downfield. But if you go back to the really good days of the Gary Kubiak, Matt Schaub, Andre Johnson, they were pushing it downfield a lot. They were built a lot of play actions. And in that window that you're mentioning, DJ, where you're looking for the 10 to 20 windows, a lot of plays over the middle of the field on crossing routes and bootlegs and stuff
Yeah.
that was really intriguing to see. And Stroud does seem like the kind of quarterback who, again, is not exactly the kind of guy who is going to take off and run often, but he is capable of moving, which I think is a huge thing to have. So I'm intrigued to see what we'll eventually see in a game. And again, as you mentioned, it's OTAs. It's not really contact. It's fake pressure that he's going up against. But all of these are great things to hear, especially considering last week we were all rolling our eyes a little bit about the idea of Davis Mills beginning with the ones, even though that's the way that things go in today's NFL. The veterans get the first crack.
Yeah, no, I agree there. You mentioned a really good point about the crosser. I mean, that's one thing that Robert Woods does at a very high level. When I was looking at some of the stats from 2017 to 2021 with the Rams, it was either that was the first route he ran the most or the second route during that entire span, which is why he was able to produce at the level he was able to produce. In Tennessee, he didn't run that many crossers. He ran a lot of go routes and hitches, and that kind of explains a little bit into why he had his career low 522 yards that he just had with the Tennessee Titans. And obviously he was coming off the knee injury, and then the quarterback carousel that they had, because again, Malik missed a lot of time. I mean, not Malik. Ryan Tannehill missed some time with that ankle injury.
Malik Willis had too much time.
Malik had 3 starts, and then you had Joshua Dobbs who had 2. So while yes, the Texans still have questions at the receiver spot, I've been doing some more research. I don't think it's gonna be as glaring as I initially thought. One, because I think Robert Woods can get close to that 2017 through 2021 form where he was basically a 1,000-yard receiver. I think he can get close to that, which would only elevate CJ's development.
Feels like he's going to need to do that. It's interesting the group of wide receivers that they have. Somebody else whose name was mentioned a couple of times at today's OTA availability on Wednesday, May 31st. Tank Dell, Bobby Slowick, the Texans offensive coordinator, had this to say about him. He doesn't blink. He's a natural separator. Talking about guys who can catch the ball, turn it upfield. Anyone who can create separation, DJ, sounds like a very welcome addition. How's Tank Dell looking? It's a third round wide receiver. I don't think you want to put too many expectations on a guy who's very small like Dell, but I definitely like what I'm reading about him.
Yeah, Tank looks as advertised from a skill set perspective. The quickness, the routes, the speed. Like his ability to get in and out of his breaks is something that he'll be able to do until he's 45 years old. Like that with that shiftiness and quickness. So I say he's been everything that's advertised. My only thing is, again, the majority of the questions I have in regards to like his ceiling as an NFL receiver is just gonna pretty come down to how he looks when there's pads on. Just like okay, how is he gonna be able to deal with the physicality that the NFL presents from being touched, coming off the line of scrimmage. Sometimes, well, granted, he'll be in the slot, so he'll get clean releases. But again, you still got that 5 yard window to really get physical with him. And I want to see how he reacts playing through contact and playing through physicality. Not, and I'm not talking about people tackling him. Nah, that's actually least of my concerns. It's more about when you're trying to separate and there are defenders getting their hands on you. Can you still separate and create the separation required so you can get the ball thrown to you? Because again, he's not going to be a 50-50 jump ball type of guy. Like that's not his skill set. So for him to win in the NFL, he has to consistently be able to separate and create separation, which is why he's a good fit in this offense because that's what he does well, and that's what's required out of the receivers in this offense. But again, how does it look when you have to consistently separate when they're getting hands on you? Because no matter how much you want to scheme it up and things of that nature, defenses will eventually figure out how to get hands on you. I mean, we saw that with the Dolphins last year where like Tyreek and Waddle, they were getting a lot of free releases. And then eventually by the end of the season, whether it was with against the Niners or the Chargers, where they was finally starting to get hands on them, that disrupted the entire timing from Tua, from the receivers, all that. Completely disrupted all the timing. And they had to eventually figure out how to adjust to that. They were able to figure out how to adjust a little bit to it the following week against Buffalo. But I just kind of want to see, how does, to bring it back to Tank, how does Tank adapt to the physicality that comes in the NFL on a route by route basis?
Does Stroud have a favorite right now? And it's early, and we've only had OTAs, but is there one guy that feels like he's developing more of a rapport than other receivers out
Nah. So last week it was Tank. Today was Nico, right? Because last week he was with the twos when we watched, and today he was with Nico. I mean, he's with the ones, and Nico's with the ones. So I think he had like about 3 or 4 completions to Nico. I think during the 2-minute drill, I think he threw a slant to Nico, and he threw like a dig to Nico over the middle to get them into field goal range while also hitting Brevin Jordan. So it just kind of depends who's out there, you know what I mean? So I wouldn't say he has a favorite to answer your question because it just kind of depends which team he's running with.
Nico Collins, interesting to see what he'll do now his third year with the team. Year one, promising signs. Last year, maybe a result of Davis Mills and the struggles of the offense, not the kind of leap that you like to see from a guy, especially a wide receiver going from year one to year two. So at least nice to hear that he's been working with CJ Stroud and they've had a little bit of a connection, at least in practice today. Let's shift over to the defensive side of the football. DJ, you were one of the first people to point out that Derek Stingley is just looking bigger. And you took a picture today, and I saw it. I was like, damn, all right, he's put on some pounds. And you also liked what you saw from him from a quickness perspective. Tell us about what you saw today.
Yeah, I don't think I haven't seen somebody. Well, again, 2 OTA practices. Had to put it out there, but I haven't seen during team kind of 7-on-7s, whatever. But team, I haven't seen someone catch a pass on him yet. From what I've seen. Yeah, like he again. I remember on last episode I mentioned okay when I was covering the Jets last year before I came to Houston, I remember what Sauce looked like in practice during OTAs. And I'm like, yeah, they had the Jets did not have a talent that resembled what Sauce looks like at practice now. A year later, 2023, seeing what Derek looks like now from a physicality standpoint, from a movement standpoint, from a size standpoint, the Texans did not have that version last year, and they have that now. And based on what we've seen in practice, they're gonna let him press more, and they're gonna let him like actually be in man coverage, and actually, if they're actually, let's say pressing, he might be in cover four, but cover four basically is off man for the most part, with a little bit of help. They're gonna put him in position to succeed, and he looks good right now. Like as we saw, you're gonna rattle off some of the things that Matt Burke had to say about Derek, and obviously D'Amico, when they both basically saying like he's been up to par and he's done everything we've asked of him. And again, no one has caught a pass on him on his side yet. While he was guarding them, we haven't seen that yet. But yeah, no, he looks like the real deal, man. In terms of just because for me, I kind of look at the movement skills, the ball skills, how they look impressed, the technique. They're checking off all those boxes. And again, I keep saying it, in this system, it helps. This system elevates cornerback play. One, they don't ask them to do too much. Two, they let the cornerbacks do what cornerbacks naturally love to do, which is press, get up in the receiver's space, and go from there. And again, it's all based off of can the front four win? And I think the Texans front four should be able to have an impact this season. So you check off all those things: the talent, the scheme, the front four. Yeah, I think we should see a Pro Bowl type season. Now, am I saying he'll make the Pro Bowl? Nah, I'm not gonna go there yet. I got some things,
I wanted that,
but I
wanted
won't
the hot
go there
take.
yet. I won't go there yet because again, like Pro Bowl is a little bit of a popularity contest. So
That's true too.
so it just kind of there's a lot of extra variables that kind of go into making a Pro Bowl or even All Pro because Laramie Tunsil should have been All Pro last year, but since his team was 13-1, they gave it to Andrew Thomas, who was on a better team in a bigger market. And again, he was a good player, but he wasn't better than LT. But when you add those factors in, that's why he was able to make, in my eyes, the Pro Bowl over LT, and the All Pro over LT. But so that's why I'm like, I won't go as far to say Derek is going to be a Pro Bowl because there's a lot of things that go into it.
Man, I thought we were going to have the first piping hot take that we can come back to on the Talkin' Texans podcast. DJ was right. But DJ's being a journalist here.
Just wait till August. August, that's when I'll have my stronger takes.
Okay.
For sure.
Okay, cool. Yeah, it's the OTAs for the takes too. We got to work our way into it.
That's true.
Matt Burke on Stingley. This is what he had to say. He's been able to do everything we've asked him to do. I'm happy with where he is. We also heard some other things that were pretty interesting from Matt Burke. Burke is currently calling the defense right now, but we don't know if it's going to be him or D'Amico Ryans come regular season. Definitely a feel thing at this moment in time. I would prefer that D'Amico delegate as much as he possibly can his first year as a head coach, especially with all the Texans have been talking about collaboration this offseason. There have been too many I need to do everything work martyrs. Yeah. I go back to the Bill O'Brien era for my liking. I feel like overextending yourself is all the way to ensure that certain elements of what you do in a job are going to suffer. Burke also said this to continue the theme that we've heard all offseason. Swarm sounds like a bad horror movie featuring bees. R.I.P. Macaulay Culkin in that one movie. His name is eluding me. He emphasized, Matt Burke did, that the team will attack. And the movie is My Girl, by the way. Anyway, we're all over the place.
I don't watch movies.
You don't watch movies?
No, not really. Jaron can tell you. Like, it's not like I just don't have the attention span. I get bored. I'll watch like TV shows. Like, like I'm watching All American. It's a terrible show, but it's a terrible good show. I watch stuff like that, but actual movie, yeah, not like I haven't seen most of the Marvels. I haven't seen I haven't seen most of the Spider-Mans. I've seen 1 through 3, but I haven't seen the ones after. Um, yeah, like, the list goes
I
on
mean,
and
there's been
on.
5 since 1 through 3.
Yeah,
There's too
exactly.
many
Like
Spider-Mans.
you know what I mean? Like I couldn't tell you. You know, I haven't seen any of the Creeds, 1, 2, 3. I haven't seen any of them. Like any of the popular movies. Like I had to get dragged to go watch
Yeah?
Endgame.
Okay. My
So
Girl's not that popular of a movie. All I know is that Macaulay Culkin's character gets killed by a bunch of bees. But
that's a terrible
anyway,
movie. That's a terrible way to for
it's a
a
terrible way.
character
But
to go out.
if you want an NFL defense to swarm, you want it to be like those bees and perhaps to attack, which is what Matt Burke is talking about. Now, maybe a little less death, killing, but
Right.
what do you take away from Matt Burke's first availability?
My takeaway, nothing. You know, we're at the cliche, you know, we're at the
Oh,
cliche
100.
part of the off season. You know what I mean? We're gonna swarm, we're gonna attack,
Swarm.
we're gonna play hard, we're gonna be an efficient offense, we're gonna complete passes, we're gonna be a physical team, we're gonna take it day by day and get better every day. We're at the cliche part of the season right now. You know what I mean? Even during the season, a little cliche, but it's a little less because we can pinpoint more stuff. But right now, it's all cliches, left and right. So that's my takeaway: is that it's cliche season where we're gonna say we're gonna swarm. Duh, you should swarm. So you get the ball carried down, or we're gonna be physical. Well, it's football; you need to be physical. Or we're gonna be an efficient offense. Why not? That makes a lot of sense. You should be an efficient offense. Everybody wants to be efficient offense. Everything that coaches say now, every other team is either saying the same thing or wants to do the same thing. So that's my takeaway. I will say though, it was interesting that he didn't that he may still call plays um in with the Texans. And I actually think that is a good idea because you made a great point. You don't want your head coach doing too much.
Right.
It's hard, man. It's hard. It's hard to do a lot. You know what I mean? Especially his first year on the job. Now Andy can do it. Bill Belichick can do it, but they've been doing it forever. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
D'Amico, this is his first year as a head coach. There's going to be so much that he isn't even prepared for, or doesn't even know how to deal with yet because it's going to be the first time going through it. It's going to be a lot of trial and error. So adding that onto your plate could, you know, make you deficient in other things. Like, for example, Mike McDaniels, right? I keep going back to the tree because, again, that's the tree. Mike McDaniel was the play caller and the head coach, but the Dolphins had a lot of pre-snap penalties. They had just a lot of penalties overall, mainly because, again, he had a lot. Like, he had a lot on his plate. Like, he trying to, like we saw at the end of the Buffalo Bills game in the playoffs. He messes up and thinks that, okay, we just got a first down. Nah, it's fourth down. It's 4th and 1. Okay. Now let me try to find another play. Let me try to find another play. Oh, we run out of time. Now it's 4th and 5. And then you got to call a whole different play, incomplete, game over. You know, where it's 4th and 1, if you have a different offensive coordinator. Now, mind you, I'm not saying Mike McDaniel isn't a good offensive coordinator. I'm not saying that. But again, if he had another guy to delegate to, and you know, just let them know, hey, it's 4th and 1. Not the offensive coordinator, instead of trying to look for the thing and do both. He can just hear it. All right, this is what we got. You know what I'm saying? Versus doing all that. You know, it's little things, but again, those little things can add up. Like even Salah, his first year in New York, somebody else called plays. It was Jeff Uber. Jeff Uber was calling plays, and he's been calling plays both years. So I'm not saying, you know, there's one size that fits all, but I'm just saying, especially on the defensive side, sometimes it's better if you just let somebody else delegate and call plays, and then you give a lot of input on what you're seeing, and you guys just kind of collaborate on that side.
Totally in agreement. There's a lot of people out there who have played Madden who all believe when they watch an NFL game that
Yeah.
they can better manage a game than the actual coaches. And I mean this specifically from when to call a timeout, when
Yep.
to get into the no huddle, when to move things along. And those things become perhaps lost in the wind if you have a head coach that's really focusing on calling plays, among other things. That's why delegation is important. And look, not all coaches are good at game management. One of the guys you listed, DJ, Andy Reid, he's always had issues with game management. No matter how many checks that he has, as far as being an offensive mind and the amount of success he's had with quarterbacks from Donovan McNabb to Michael Vick to now Patrick Mahomes and others along the way. This is a guy that has issues there. So when you ask a guy to do more and more and more, those things can potentially go by the wayside. So I hope it's something that, in addition to, maybe delegating the play calling, maybe he should be delegating game management decisions in a way where Nathaniel Hackett was unable to at the beginning of last year and then eventually did. And I don't know if that did Hackett in. I think that was more on Russell Wilson just not being the same player he was the year before. But the game management decisions that the Broncos made last season under Hackett in his first year when he wasn't an offensive coordinator were a bleeping disaster. So it's something to keep in mind. Not the end of the world if D'Amico calls the defense. I mean, Bill Belichick's seemingly called the defense at times for the Patriots in the past. But I think, yeah, year one, don't do too much.
Yeah,
I
no,
want
I
to,
agree. Yeah, don't do too much. No, I agree there.
right. It helps. Really quick on the special team side of things, I love Frank Ross. I think he's hilarious. Frank Ross was asked about the new kickoff rule where you can call a fair catch and the ball just goes to the 25. He said, let's keep football tough. Exactly what I'd hope to hear from Frank Ross. I also mentioned Tank Dell. Got that God-given athleticism. He's got sudden quickness. I'm not sure what you're allowed to share, DJ, as far as what you saw out there, but is Tank Dell in the mix to potentially be the starting returner for the Houston Texans going into next year? Because it does feel like of all the guys that they have, he's a guy who had success doing it in college. A lot of guys in the NFL have had success being returners in addition to playing other positions in college. But that's a really did well at UA doing that.
Yeah, no, I think having Dell in that role could only help, because again, right, you want to build up his confidence. You want to find ways to get the ball in his hands. Because again, he's electric when the ball's in his hands. Like I have no questions about that. It's about the process of getting the ball in his hands, you know. So for year one, you want to be creative in terms of finding ways to get him the ball. And punt return, kick return, that's a great way. You know what I mean? Like where you don't necessarily, if you let's say hypothetically, like he's like your third or fourth receiver, you're not wasting that dynamic ability because you can still use him on kick return, punt return, and he gets confidence in that. And now you can put more on his plate, and you can let's do some more gadget stuff with him, give him the ball in space. So and because that'd be very similar to punt return, kick return, a little different, but again, getting him the ball in space. So yeah, I can easily see a scenario where Tank Dell is the starting kick returner and punt returner. I mean, last year Desmond King did it. Desmond King and Tremont Smith, they were the returners. Smith is obviously gone, but you still have King. But you can easily put Tank back there, and I mean, I don't know many other guys that are as dynamic as Tank on the roster right now.
Speaking of dynamic, the Texas tackle combination, I would say that's pretty damn dynamic, but it's a different way. Obviously, we're talking about big hug mollies. For Aaron Wilson of Channel 2 in Houston, there's talk about a Tytus Howard extension. Texans have spent a lot of money on the offensive line this offseason already. The Shaq Mason extension, the Laramie Tunsil extension, drafting Juice Scruggs. So you already have Kenyon Green on the roster. Per Wilson, Howard is expected to be the next man up for a lucrative contract. Is expected to be the Texans' plan for future negotiations, according to league sources. They're going to have a very expensive offensive line if they give Howard an extension. But what we've seen from Howard, I feel like an extension would make a lot of sense. We've seen the guy play very well for this team.
Yeah, again, the Texans have a top 10 tackle duo in the entire NFL, arguably top five. Because again, like you have um, Laramie, who's arguably the best left tackle in the game. A lot of people give it to Trent. I'm really interested to see how Tunsil looks in this offensive system that specializes on athletic um, offensive tackles, which Laramie can do that. At a high level. We all know he can easily be successful when it comes to gap schemes. They're gonna run a lot of zone. That's gonna be their bread and butter. Zone runs, outside, inside, things of that nature. So I'm really interested to see how this scheme elevates his production and his ability to be impactful, especially in the run game. Because again, he was playing at a top 2-1 level last year. And then obviously Tytus played at a very high level too. Like we knew going into each week, the tackle spot was not going to be an issue for Davis. I believe they allowed the second fewest sacks from a tackle tandem in the entire NFL last year. And they're bringing both of those guys back. They got Tunsil locked up. They got Howard, who, I also heard that report earlier last week. The money can't really confirm yet, but it will be pricey. It'll be pricey. It'll be very pricey. Close, like kind of. I don't. How about I mean, closer to that 20 mil range, close to that. Not exactly sure if it's exactly that, but that's kind of what I've heard. But we'll see what happens if a deal is done. Um, so that they have made the decision. They are going to invest in the offensive line to ensure CJ Stroud's development. I mean, we're just being honest. CJ wasn't. I mean, yes, we saw it at Georgia where he was creating a bunch of off scripts, but you don't want your quarterback living that way.
No.
Those first few years, unless that's just naturally their bag. Like Josh Allen, that's naturally his bag. Lamar, naturally his bag. Mahomes, naturally his bag. Deshaun, naturally his bag. But we kind of saw that a little bit. Josh, not necessarily, but everybody else that I mentioned, we kind of saw them play that type of style in college, and they've been able to refine their game and be able to turn that off script stuff on when necessary. CJ, outside of that Georgia game, we didn't really see that much often in terms of the off script playing in chaos and making something out of nothing. So the last thing you want to do is try to make him live in that space. So they made the decision we're going to invest heavy on the offensive line, which is smart. Tytus is a good tackle. Laramie is an elite tackle. Shaq, they felt, is a good guard. They used a first round pick on Kenyon Green last year, and now you have a second round pick on the center. So they have a lot of money invested there, and that's smart. That's smart. And later on you get you another receiver, and then now you have everything you need for CJ Stroud to succeed, and they'll be all whether he can do it or not.
As you mentioned, just having a guy in the rookie deal at quarterback, this allows you to really pay a premium for a good offensive line. And, a couple of years back, that's what the Cowboys were doing in front of Dak Prescott. And it's going to happen in other places across the league too. So I expect to get done. It is noteworthy how much they're going to be spending on that offensive line. The good news is, I mean, they're not paying anybody. They're really not paying anybody, at least for a long period of time, other than Laramie Tunsil. So there we go. We'll see what happens on that front. And the last bit of information this week, DJ, before we wrap this thing up, the Texans are going to have joint practices in preseason with the New Orleans Saints in New Orleans and the Miami Dolphins in Houston, both before their respective preseason games against the two teams. It's the first time since the Bill O'Brien era that we've seen joint practices. I'm a big believer in joint practices. I feel like people, if you're paying for preseason tickets at that, you should be getting tickets for these joint practices. There's a chance for a skirmish. You actually see the ones go up against one another. It can get heated out there. Joint practices, the team has more control. It happens. There's no possibility for fumbles or plays that totally botch up the series and result in a punt. Teams just go at each other with their ones going against ones for entire practice. And okay, maybe it's not quite a game, but I like that they're back to joint practices. I think it's only going to help.
Oh, I completely agree. Everything you said. And I think the most important thing about joint practice is you see exactly where your team is.
Yeah.
Like I remember in 2021, again, I haven't been covering NFL that long, but I remember the Jets, they had joint practices with the Green Bay Packers and the Eagles. And now you kind of had an idea of how the Jets were going to look and how they were going to be throughout the season prior to those joint practices. But then those joint practices give you a clear indication, okay, there are going to be some struggles, a lot of struggles, mainly because I saw them going against, our NFC contender, and there was a gigantic gap in 2021 And then when they went against the Eagles, who ended up surprising people, people thought the Eagles were going to be bad that year in 2021. They ended up going to the wild card. The Eagles, from a line of scrimmage perspective, on the skill spots, it was kind of even both ways. But in a line of scrimmage, the Eagles were dominant on both sides, and that was able to carry them through the playoffs, to the playoffs. And you also saw, like, okay, especially in those first joint practices with the Packers and against the Eagles, the O-line had some protection issues. Now we come to find out later, it was more like the quarterback didn't really have a good feel for pressure. But again, you got to see that, and it's harder to see that during camp when it's just Texans ones versus Texans ones over defense. Now we'll be able to get to see them against their defense against a very fast offense in the Miami Dolphins. And then, they mentioned the fact that they'll be able to see the Texans because, again, they go against a 4-man front every practice, but now they'll be able to go against a 3-man front, basically a 3-4 type front where you're going to have both outside linebackers kind of hovering over the offensive tackle, kind of that 5 technique spot. And you're going to be able to, okay, how do we adjust to that? And how do we beat that? I remember talking to one coach today, and I remember asking, like, hey, like, what do you guys do? Like, what's the approach when you see like a 5-man front? Because a lot of those times, like, those are the fronts that can kind of give us some issues. And he was just like, we have answers for all that, but it is true. Like, that can give us some problems that's from time to time. And the fact that they'll be able to get a little bit of practice against that can carry them through the season. Just on, okay, how do we attack this type of front, play in and play out? And then you get to see different coverages on the back end too. So it's a different vibe. It's a different look that you get to practice against, which prepares you more for week 1 when you go against the Baltimore Ravens.
Mm-hmm. Controlled reps. It's the best part. It's hard to do that in the game. These preseason games seem to have less and less value by the year. Obviously, less and less rewatch value or watch value at all. I hate watching the preseason. I hate it. I hate it so much. It's awful. It's awful. I mean, I hope those guys make the most of it, the ones who are actually playing for their football careers, because I understand how important it is for those guys, but it is just not a watchable product. Everyone's getting checked in and out, and just feels like you're not really watching a football game. It feels like you're watching a mess at times with all the rotating players in and out and all that. But anyway, that's just how I feel about it. Anyway, it's awful. Bad.
I mean,
sad.
Did you go to any of the preseason game last year?
It was the first year, DJ, in my entire radio career covering an NFL team that I said no to all 3. I was done.
Good job. Good job. Nope. Good job. Because they didn't even show us anything.
Yep.
On offense, at least. Defense, a lot of it still looks similar, but they didn't even show us anything on offense. Like, nothing at all. Like,
they're also paranoid that everyone's going to use it against them in the regular season game. My God, guys.
Yeah, because
codes.
Yeah, because the entire world was just so scared to see the 2022 Texans offense.
Bills Mafia.
Come on, man. Like my thing is, if you can't, like, I understand hiding stuff. That's fine. That makes total sense. I understand hiding stuff. But, like, vanilla to that point, like, you're just wasting time.
Mm-hmm.
To that point, yeah, you're just wasting your time at that point. Like, all you're doing is putting people in line to get hurt for no reason. And then that's that. And it's funny because, like, by week 3, like, everybody will kind of have an idea on what you're trying to do. So I guess, whatever for that quarter and a half of reps. I mean, a quarter and a half of catching somebody by surprise. I mean,
but full game prices for the fans that are stuck with those season tickets.
Exactly.
Congratulations. You're almost rooting for the team to have more road games in the preseason than home games.
They do this year, right?
Off the top of my head, I don't know. DJ,
I know the Dolphin game's at home. I know the Dolphin game at home. Mm-hmm. First game, to be honest.
Saints game is in New Orleans.
Yeah.
The Cowboys game, I don't know what year where this will take place this year, because usually they play the Cowboys every year, right? Unless they stopped last season. Honestly, I don't even know. It's cool.
They didn't play the Cowboys last year. It was Rams, Niners, and somebody else.
The battle for Texas is home. Didn't even happen. What an outrageous. They did play in the regular season at least. Anyway, that's going to wrap up today's edition of the Talkin Texans podcast. Make sure that you're following DJ on Twitter for all the Texans news you can handle, and check out his work at ESPN.com. You can hear me 10 to noon on ESPN 97.5 and 92.5 on that radio station. We also have a show podcast. So for DJ, I am really Paul Gallant. So long, farewell, and have yourselves a wonderful week.